All right, here we go. We actually have one of the dopest like lead singers in a very like well-known independent band at Wake at Last. We have Vincent Torres, lead singer of Awake at Last. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good, my friend. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. And when I initially first heard of like the band and all that, like I had like Twitter at the time, and then I would get like a lot of like DMs and like follows and stuff like that because like I know like with some people like they follow like certain people on Twitter, like Lil B, like EDM artists, like all that type of stuff too. And like I think your band like followed me for a bit of my first like Twitter account and all that, and like I think you guys like sent like a DM with like your music and all that, and I checked out like the music from there. I think it was Life Age Death, and then like I was like listening to it, and then it was like pretty good, and then I was like listening to like The Change and like all these like other songs too, like Unfinished Business and all that, Carry On, Wayward Son and all that, and it's amazing to hear and all that, even with the covers and even with the style and all that too. Like it kind of reminds me of like artists like like Linkin Park and all that, and like also with like Yellow Card and all that, but it has like more of like even like Nothing But Thieves and all that too. Like it kind of has like a unique sound that I think you've explained like in past interviews and like in other content as well and all that. So
Yeah. We've always been I like all those bands you mentioned, so that all works out. We've always been a little bit of like a theatrical rock band. I was like
yeah,
really into like musical theater when I was younger, so I always try to bring like some of that storytelling and some of that like those more theatrical elements to the music. But I also still kind of carry the torch for like the 2000s emo era that I was like
yeah.
forged in.
Yeah, like that's like pretty much my favorite sound as well too. And we'll definitely dig more on that for a bit too. But like I want to start it off at like the very beginning. So like growing up in like Dover, Delaware, what was like the environment like for you growing up? And would you say it was a great experience growing up there, like in a small city like that?
So I was born in, I apologize for my voice, by the way. I'm still kind of recovering from a little bit of a cold. But so I was actually born in Austin, Texas, right? Both my parents were in the military. And I was there until I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And then we had like a house fire, which it sounds traumatic, but it's my earliest human memory is this house fire that happened when I was a kid. But I remember that was when a lot of changes started to happen, and my parents were both active in the military. And there's a huge base over here in Delaware, so they got sent off over here. And so all the years that mattered, I spent here in Delaware. Now I don't live in like the capital like Dover. I live a little bit north, but it's not bad. It was quiet. I always say that my like hometown, it reminds me of like Pallet Town from Pokemon. It's got like there's a little library, there's a little opera house, there's all these little like shops and stuff, and it's like small. It's in this sort of historic area, which I do think is nice, and I think that I'm lucky that to live in an area that had like pretty low crime rate, lots of like farmland, at least back then. Now it's all cookie cutter housing developments, but um I always give my parents a hard time though, because I grew up to become a musician. It's like, so you're telling me I could have grown up in Austin, Texas, one of the hugest live music capitals of the world, but instead you shipped me off to Delaware, which is like this big and all the way over there.
Yeah.
But but that being said, it wasn't a bad vibe. It was quiet, and I guess it was easier to be a big fish in a small pond than to try to come up in Texas, which would have been probably way more competitive, way more intense. But so I love it here. It's home. It's got a special place in my heart. But music wise, it was never really like it doesn't have like a great original music scene. A lot of the stuff down here involves like the beach. So there's a lot of like cover bands, a lot of beach gigs, a lot of like, go play at a restaurant for a couple hours and make a few bucks kind of stuff, which was a little bit tougher, but I don't hate that I ended up here. It's just that, well, I'll put it this way. The biggest advantage that we got from being here is that Delaware is within 3 to 5 hours of a lot of major cities, right? Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York, West Virginia. There's a bunch like there's Virginia Beach and there's all that Washington D.C.'s. It's all right there. So it was easy as a band when we wanted to start traveling and getting out there to hit those spots, on little weekend runs and kind of move out. Where if we were in somewhere like Texas or even further west, mean, you're looking at like 8 to 10 hours in between major cities and major points, right? So it was kind of like, I don't know. I guess you gotta just like find the silver linings in it all.
Yeah, nah, I definitely agree on all that. And I mean, with the DMV and all that, it's like more like R&B, rap, hip hop, even like soul music as well too, go-go. Like I think it has like more unique sounds from there, but it's like far as like with like rock and all that, like usually with the main hubs, it's like, in small cities like in the Midwest and then Seattle with grunge, like California,
Right.
Texas, and all those other places too. So I definitely like agree in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like what was like your first introduction to music, like along with like your musical background and history?
So my music journey started pretty young. I was probably in second grade when they started doing like, how like schools would do like the little kid choirs where like you'd have like, 20 kids up there and we'd sing like little silly songs and do silly little choreographies and stuff like that. Um, it started there and it was one of those things I feel bad because I was made fun of like mercilessly for that for like most of my like teen years. I was always a choir kid because I just love music, right? And I didn't even really know if I was any good at it until like later on, probably when I was in like high school, they start taking it a little bit more seriously, middle school, high school era. But so it started there. But even when I was a little kid, my parents said I was always like when I was a baby at a flea market, they said that there was like this guitar there that I was like screaming for. And they were like, I was a kid that didn't usually scream for stuff at these places. And it was this dinky little crap guitar, but I just like had to have it. And then I got it and they said I played for it with it like every day since. They were like, huh, maybe we got to get him a little piano or something because, he's starting to find his way. And then it kind of, I guess, took it from there. So it started with like choirs. I did school band for a little while, but I didn't super love the saxophone. It didn't really hit. So of course, once I hit like middle school, it was more choir, and then high school came around, and that's when it was like time to get a guitar. And then it all started for me on guitar because by the time I could pick up a guitar, I was already learning what I could from like Green Day, all those
Yeah.
classics, a lot. That was like some of those bands I was really into when I was a kid, and then it was only a matter of time for once I learned a power chord, it was like, I want to start writing my own music, and then I started doing that. And I think the thing that was really like the inciting incident for my hero's journey to become a music was uh there was like a talent show at my high school. And like I said, I was pretty made fun of. Like I was bullied a lot. That's why a lot of my music has a lot of like, stand together, fight the dreams, don't let anybody bring you down. Like those themes, like I think they just stick with you, even when you have to go through crap like that when you're a kid. And I I signed up for this talent show, which was like bold because I was pretty quiet about my music. I didn't really, I remember even when I was in middle school, they wanted me to do a solo, and I was so scared of like getting made fun of, or maybe it was stage fright or whatever it was, that I like didn't even do this solo, even though I could sing it the best in the class or whatever. But this talent show was like a big move for me, and thanks to my friends, thanks to the students, it was like the students vote thing. They must have liked what we did because we won that. And I think when you like get that first win, or even if you're like an author or anything, when you write that first book or you get that first moment where you're like, huh, this is like something I actually like succeeded in. I think that kind of like brands you. And then from then on, it's like it kind of becomes one of the things you associate yourself with. And ever since then, a lot of the bullying stopped. I think people, once they were like, oh, he's that weird kid that's always drawing anime in the back of the room, but he's a pretty good singer and he can play guitar. So let's like not give him as much of a hard time, and that was kind of like a big kind of formative. And of course, that same talent show that I played. My guitar player now in Awake at Last, Eric, who's like my OG homie. We are like that. We've stayed together ever since, like since we were like kids, So we're in our 30s now. So it's like we just been on this journey for a long time, just getting out there and doing what we can.
Yeah, nah, I definitely agree too. Like, especially on that whole like bullying situation too, because I know with like a lot of bands too, like there is like a situation where like they have like artists have been like bullied before, like in the past as like kids and all that, but then they manifested and like created onto like something better and all that. And one crazy fact, like Andy Black from like Black Veil Brides, like I was just researching him like a little bit more and all that. Like I remembered one of his music videos was inspired by like his backstory on like how he was like bullied like in the past like in like Catholic school and all that because of like what he wore and like what he listened to and all that, and then he manifested into something better to like put it onto music. And I think like that was like one of his songs that kind of led like Black Veil Brides like onto like fame and all that too, so it's like pretty interesting to see and all that.
Yeah, I think I think that a lot of artists, we even, even if you look at like actors and stuff, I think in order to tap into certain emotions, you kind of have to remember some of those things, and we're all kind of forged in that. And everyone who doesn't understand something you're listening to or doesn't understand something you're into, like especially when you're young, like they'll judge it quick, but eventually, they see you on stage one day and they're like, "Oh wow, like you like figured it out, man." It's just
Yeah,
like, yeah, like I
yeah,
kind of did.
yeah. No, 100% too. And like I'm assuming like since you're like an 80s like 90s like kid and all that too. Like what was like that first like ever CD like that you've bought with your money that got into your like love of like music and all that?
That is a little bit of a hard question to answer because I don't, it's been a while since I bought my first CD. I could say the first CD that I bought that I think really impacted my like the way I started buying CDs was there was like a couple of the back in the day, like when FYE still sold mostly like CDs and stuff instead of all the like anime stuff and all the fan servicey stuff they serve now, which I still like, but I remember there's a couple bands that really stood out to me. There was this band Finch that I was really into, and I mean I was the kid that anytime I got like my allowance on the weekend or whatever, that's the first thing I would do is go find some new music to get into. So Finch was a big one for me. AFI is huge for me. I think AFI was like a big formative one for me, especially because I think I got into them with I think Sing the Sorrow was the first one I got into, which, according to my other friends who are more AFI fans, I needed to go sooner than that. So I eventually started to get, some of the other ones, and I like those ones a lot too. But I think Sing the Sorrow, since it was my first one, that kind of that emo East Coast hardcore thing that AFI used to do was just totally my vibe. And I just thought Davey Havoc was like the coolest, man. But then I remember there were these compilation albums. It was called like Rock Against Bush or whatever. And it was basically like, it was when like President Bush was pissing everybody off and there was all these punk bands and all these like Warp Tour bands that were like coming together and putting out these compilation albums. And I remember there's a lot of cool bands in there that I picked up on that I like really like what's the one called? Matchbox. Is it Matchbox Romance
Match
or Matchbook
I think
Romance?
Matchbox 20 or
Well,
something like
no,
that.
Matchbox 20 was a big 90s one. Yeah, my uncle got me
Uh,
on that. But there was another one called
oh,
like Matchbook Romance. It was like more
oh, chill.
emo. There was a song called Lion and the Lamb. I can't remember who sang that one, but that was a really good one. I wish I still had that CD, honestly. It must be like lost in the abyss of like one of my old
Chill.
cars or something. But then I remember the Warped Tour compilation started coming out, and that's when one of my first major goals was to play Warped Tour because all these amazing bands were on Warped Tour. And because the Warped Tour every year is like, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, et cetera, et cetera. They had these little compilations of all the different bands. They'd each put a song on there, and I always thought that was super cool too. So I think that's where it all like really started. And then that's of course, kind of when I started playing in bands. And back then it was like performing in like bowling alleys and skating rinks and like whatever you could get because we were underage. So you couldn't even get into the bar scene yet. You were just kind of out and about, just playing wherever you could. Like backyard shows are one of my favorites. I used to love like basement house shows. Those were great. There's so many good like local like rock bands, metalcore bands. We all used to just get together. And it was always fun. We had these little competitions, little teenage dramas between the bands, like, oh, that guy can
Yeah.
shred, but I can shred way better, or whatever it was, it was just like stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's where a lot of it started. But I would say like AFI was a big formative band. The Used was a big formative band for me. My Chemical Romance obviously was like freaking. They just were huge. One of the first major concerts I went to was the Taste of Chaos tour, which was like The Used, My Chemical Romance. I think Static Lullaby was on it. I want to say Killswitch Engage was on it. I just remember it was one of the coolest groups of bands ever. And I mean, that was standing in that, it was at like Jersey or something. It was at the Tweeter Center. I forget what it's called now, but that was like my first big like realization where I was like, oh my God, like this is like a goal, right? Because it's all about the goals. You gotta just put your quest items on your brain, and you gotta like follow those quests till you get to them, and luckily, even with Awake at Last, we've been able to play a lot of these venues where I used to see some of these bands. You know what I mean? So it's been really really cool to like you know follow through on that. So it was definitely a lot of those. Muse is a big one for me too. My dad got me into Muse, and he started me with a lot of earlier stuff too. Like Journey was a big one for me. Santana is a big one. I'm adopted Mexican, so my dad's Mexican, so we listen to Santana like all the time. And so I guess it all just kind of started there. But I'd say one of the first CDs I remember was that like that Bird, the Sing the Sorrow. Like it was just like one of the coolest records ever. I just ended up going for that one.
Yeah, no, 100% too, and like those are like very like amazing like influences, like to even like get into like music and all that too, and to even kind of ask like more and all that, like what inspired you to become like an artist and like even become like a part of an amazing band like Awake at Last and all that.
I guess it kind of back on my last story a little bit. I think it started with that first win, right? And then it was about I want to say 3 or 4 years later, I started playing with people who were a lot better than me, and then they would kind of train me up, right? Like because they saw like some potential. So I like started getting into playing with people who were like way better guitarists, better singers, whatever it was, and they would like kind of help me to kind of forge my own path forward. And I think I think it started with the fact that that was the first time that I felt like accepted by my peers because like I said, it was pretty tough for me. A lot of people were like not super cool with me when I was a kid for whatever reason. I mean, I was like the weird kid that was just drawing anime all the time and like I was like a nerd, but you know but I think as it kind of progressed from there, it started with the fact that it gave me a little bit of purpose, and then I guess, you start to compound onto that, like, the acceptance of people, meeting new people was really fun. I always wanted to travel. Being in a band is a great way to travel it's not easy. It's kind of like, it can get tough sometimes, but you get to see a lot of cool places. Like I've been, all over North America. I've been down to Mexico, I've been up to Canada. We've done like coast to coast a few times. It is a little bit harder to get all the way to the West Coast. I feel bad because we do have fans over there. We want to get back over there, but like when you start crossing the Mississippi, man, it's just like the drives get longer and it gets a little tougher. So you have to like find those opportunities to kind of like get on bigger tours where you have like a caravan going over there because just solo in it, if you don't have like a really established fan base in some of these places, some of those shows can flop out and then that's tough because you're not selling merch, you're not really making any money, and then you start having to dig into the account to get your gas, all that good stuff. But it I think the idea of bringing people together and inspiring them to like also pursue their dreams, like to if I could be a living example and show people that it's possible to do what you love if you just do what you love and you like put the work in and you put the effort in, that's definitely something I think that sustains me as an artist and kind of became my purpose. And then and I've always been a storyteller. I've always had stories. I've always had ideas I want to get out. Like even like you said, you've listened to like Life, Death, Rebirth, and The Change. Like if you listen to them like from beginning to end, there's the little story beats in there that like they're a little hidden. But if sometimes fans will ask me about them, I love it when they do that because I can kind of explain where my head was at when I was writing them. But I dabble a lot with like spirituality. For some reason, I'm obsessed with like the afterlife and like what comes next. I think it's because they say that Aries, the zodiac sign, is like a death sign, so we always just tend to like
Yeah.
be curious about it. But I remember picking up like the Tibetan Book of the Dead back in the day and like reading up on it. And it kind of like the way they see it going. It's like when you leave this plane, your soul goes somewhere else, and then you have to like face these challenges to figure out like where you fit to get back into the reincarnation cycle or whether or not you move on to paradise or you burn for a few years or whatever it is, but it's all based off of your human experiences, how you impacted the world, how you like, where your karma is at or whatever. And I think I just took that and rolled with it, and coming from like a nerd background, I always say that my band kind of has like Final Fantasy elements to it. Like I was a big Final Fantasy nerd, so you'll hear these little like I told these little stories like the kid on the front of the album, the artwork. That kid is the story behind that is that this kid was born with all of their memories and all of their experiences from all their past lives. And they were destined to use that knowledge and use that experience to try to bring about like a change, like a revolution in the world, to try to like return people to spirituality from technology or something like that. And but because you have all these voices, all these expectations, I think we all deal with that. It sort of takes the form of mental health, which is why you get to some songs that are a little bit darker, like My Enemy or Paralyzed, and so it's about this kid's journey of trying to like get there and fight through and bring this change about. So it's always been a storytelling journey for me. And I think that as long as I can tell stories and I can use that as an outlet to inspire and strengthen people who are like going through stuff and make songs that are relatable, I don't see any reason to like stop. I think I'll
Yeah.
always do it for as long as I can.
Yeah. And, no, I definitely agree as well too. And one thing that you talked about is like touring and all that, and like as like an independent like band and all that, touring is like one of like the main essential things to even making like a lot of revenue into like gaining like a fan base and all that. So tell me more about that touring experience and performing on the road and like what would be like some do's and don'ts for an artist on tour that you would share.
I touring is the way that we kind of built ourselves up. We started playing just wherever we could, booking spots wherever we could just to get there, just to see a new city or experience a new place. Touring definitely takes its toll though. Like, even though we have our van set up with like little bunk beds and stuff, like it's still just like a plank of wood and like, some like memory foam mattresses and, a couple sleeping bags, so I love the brotherhood of touring because, when we're home, all my guys, all my band members, we all have lives. We've all got
Yeah.
stuff that we're doing independently, stuff that we're all working on, you know. But when you're on the road and it's just like you five or you six, sometimes we'll have like a six guy with us, like a merch person or like a media person. Like it really it feels like, it's like a video game. You're like out there with your party of adventurers and you've got your vehicle, which you have to maintain because, tires pop, dude. Belts will break in your van. Actually in Canada, we got really lucky because our trailer, like the whole trailer was starting to come off of the frame of like the base that this thing's connected to. It was bad. We were like, oh my God, like if our trailer like flies off, that's everything. It was over. Like, and I swear, man, we found this like out of nowhere, like audio place that was like off a highway in this small little like town, and they just happened to be available and happened to have what we needed. So you get those little like quests, I guess, where you kind of just like experience those kinds of things. And it was like it is great. And then, of course, when you build a fan base like that, you might play for 5 or 10 people one day. And then next time you come to town, because we did a lot of like weekend runs first. We do like a weekend run, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, come home. Then we go this direction, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, something, Sunday, come home, et cetera, et cetera. And then once we started realizing that certain places had more active music scenes or more people were going out to shows, we would start to like loop those into some of these trips until eventually we could do like 10-day runs, 12-day runs, 15-day runs, double week runs, where it's like weekend, 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 you know what I mean? And it built up the fan base. And of course, it was a lot easier back then to do that because there was a lot of like outreach. We were messaging a lot of people, and it was easier in the early phases because there wasn't as many people to like try and message. It was like find this person, but then and I hate to say it, but like like uh what's the word I'm looking for? I guess I'll just say apps like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Even we found you on Twitter in the early phases, like you said, and it feels like those outlets, those companies or whatever, actively work against independent artists that are trying to like stay connected to their fan base. Because there was a time where on Facebook, if you were going to a town, you could look through your friends list, click a town, and it would show you all the people that follow your band from that town, and you could do an outreach like, hey, we're gonna be only 30 miles away from you on this day. But then for some reason out, you go back to the next tour, it's like, why is this feature gone? Like, and if and when you start getting hundreds and hundreds of names in there and thousands of names, it's like, oh, I don't remember all the people that we knew from this town. But back in Facebook, you were able to hit that button and it would like show you who was from that area. And then you could boom, send out the invites and whoever would show up or could show up would show up. And, I hate how in a lot of like newer elements, they've started to like do that less. But, you know, I like that we built up the band old school though. I loved connecting with people. I used to get in trouble with the band a lot because I would play the show, sing my heart out, but then spend the rest of the evening trying to talk to everybody over the noise of the show because I just wanted to connect with people. I love talking about things. I love talking about music. I love talking about where they're at in their lives, all that good stuff. I always love that connection, and it was always like just so euphoric for me to be able to like meet these strangers, connect with them through music, which is like the universal language, and then maybe shed a little bit of positivity. I always try to stay positive, because a lot of peeps that listen to our music, that listen to even emo music or music from genres similar to ours, like we're all going through it, you know what I mean? And so it's like it's nice when you get to like connect with an artist or connect with a listener that is going through some of the same stuff you've gone through. And so touring for me was always an adventure. But on top of that, the way that the country is set up, every city you go to is almost the same, right? Like it's like you're on long roads, and everyone thinks like, oh, I want to travel, I want to go see this, and like, yes, there is that in there. When you get somewhere new, there's a vibe, but a lot of the lead up, I mean, it's the same road, it's the same stop, Subway, McDonald's, Walmart, it's all like set up, eat like a little shopping mall. Like the whole country is just a different shopping mall, and everywhere you go, the same comforts of home can be found. So I always say that with touring, the adventure in touring is in the people that you meet. It's at the show when you like connect with people. That's when you feel like you've traveled. That's when you feel like you've like made a new connection or made a new like leap in what you're trying to do. So it's beautiful, and I honestly miss it. We're working on some stuff this year to get back out there. So I'm really hoping some of this stuff comes through so we can get back out, because performing is like the best part of all this. But
Yeah.
I love touring because of the connection with the people.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think like it kind of sums up like on how like the importance of like connectivity like even like works from there and all that. And to even like speak more about like the band like in general and all that, like what was like the inspiration and backstory behind the station?
Behind the what? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Behind like the band's name, like Awake at Last.
Oh. So Awake at Last came up. So originally we were going to call the band Alive at Last. It was sort of like a kind of play on like finally we know what we want to live for. But we like we've been kind of just coasting through life up until the point this band came into our life, and now it's like bam, now we're alive. Like, like pull the lever. We're going. And I thought that was still a pretty good band name, but when that was right around the time I started digging more into the spiritual aspect of stuff. So when it comes to the idea, and I got really into like the secret and the law of attraction, and that really became a driving force behind this, because that gave me the like the it gave me the tool to be like, I want this. I remember one of my first like affirmations was, I want to see my band on a big stage with a bunch of beautiful lights behind us in front of thousands of people. Now we've played shows at this point in front of thousands of people, but our first like the first time I saw it kind of manifest and saw it happen was, it wasn't that we had played a show in front of thousands of people yet, but we had put out a music video that had the band on a stage with these big lights behind us. And that music video was the first video we had that hit like 100,000 views, right? So sometimes the universe will like throw these things at you that are like different, but that's still what my vision was, right? Like this video was still seen by thousands and thousands of people. And there it was, my band on a big stage with these big lights, even though it was the music or the video format rather than like live. Now, since then, we have played shows that have been amazing. Like, when we toured with Ice Nine Kills, I mean, it was thousands of people every night. It was crazy awesome. And you know, but that all came from, and then there was like a thing called like The Awakening, and it was like it was sort of like a sequel to The Secret. It was sort of like, and that's when I was like, well, instead of Alive at Last, let's do Awake at Last. Like I wanted it to be the spiritual awakening that me, Eric, and my band members experienced when we decided that being in a band, doing music didn't have to just be a catharsis, something that we love to do, but could be how we actually like make our way in the world. And that was so, and once I brought that to the table, everybody like was like, yeah, let's do that, and then that's when it became Awake at Last.
So I want to get on to like this like next question for a bit too. So to speak more on the creative process. So what's like the band's creative process like when making music, and maybe like even like talk about like the inspiration and creative process for like the latest release, which was like the balance and all that.
So when we first started creating music, it was all of us in a garage together, because a lot of us lived closer together. But throughout the years, we've had different band members come from different places. Three of my guys are in New York now. So And with the evolution of digital studios and things of that nature, a lot of what we've been doing more recently has been uh like deeply involved with like digital recording, right? Because I can record a vocal line or a guitar part idea and send it to my buddy in New York, and he can throw some bass on it, and he can send it to my guitar player Eric. But and then because, like I said, Eric is my OG, a lot of what we're doing now, because we are working on some new music I'm really excited about. I'm just going to him, and him and I will sit in the studio and we'll get all of our pieces down, and we'll kind of like put some rough stuff in there, like rough drums, rough bass, just to like get an idea. Then we'll send that to our band members and be like, hey, like here's like the gist of the song, but obviously the bass needs to be you. So, sauce it up with, because my bass player is an incredible musician. So I love it when he gets in there and he like adds some like funk elements and some cool stuff to the music. And then we've got this newer guitar player who's really good. He's really talented. He can do a lot of the really shreddy stuff. So we've been getting him to throw a little bit more like, like it's like saucy stuff in there. And then we'll bounce the ideas off the drummer and like see if they want to like move some fills around or like rearrange some things differently. But a lot of the creative process with that it's shifted to digital now, right? So there's a lot more digital stuff going on. But as far as the balance is concerned, the balance, I love it and hate it at the same time, okay? Because the balance was written and represented a time of like chaos and like being unsure. Like we wrote that whole album during like the pandemic shutdown, which, really like messed up our momentum as a band. Like we were really killing it, flying high in 2019. And then, when the pandemic happened and they shut down live music for like, I think it was like a year and a half almost. And then it was like we had nothing. So unfortunately, the reason it has kind of these darker themes is because I was just stuck at home, like in my own head, and I didn't know what to do with all these negative thoughts, with all these like lost hopes, because I there was a time where it was like seeming pretty bad. I was like, this might not come back, and I think that's where the balance comes in, and I tried to pepper little bits of inspiration in it, but overall, I think the tone of the balance was a tone of like sadness and longing and missing and of course I lost a very, very dear friend of mine, and that's where the song "The Other Side" came from. And I think that was like my favorite track on that record because I think that helped me through my grief process of like losing that person. But I just remember Balance as like a dark time, which is why I say I love and hate it, because I was able to get those emotions out using the outlet. But every time I listen to it now, it does take me back to like the pandemic, and that's why moving forward with these new songs, I'm excited to kind of like get back to like, okay, like I'm back. Like let's move this forward now. Like we're done with that dark chapter. Like let's get to the next story, and so that's really kind of how it comes down. I do write primarily all the lyrics and all the stories and concepts. That's mostly me, and I'm lucky that my band like totally support me in that. But they're also the type that like if something sounds whack or something sounds cheesy, they're like, we should find a better word for this, or we should move this around. So I love how involved we all are in it now, and with
Yeah.
the remote stuff, we've been doing a lot more like get together and write stuff. And this record that we're working on now, we haven't worked with any other producers or songwriters yet. We've just been making the music we as a band want to put out. And then, as the process moves forward, if we decide to rearrange some stuff or when we get, like mixes or mastering done later on, we might change some stuff on it. But I love that we're going into it self-sufficient. We're going into it with just like our own ideas, our own songs, our own like vibes right now. So I'm really excited because I think we're gonna take it back a little bit, but also bring it to the future. The some of those more theatrical elements I used to bring in Life, Death, Rebirth, the songs like Purgatorium and Constellations, and then Into the Change, where we have some of those anthemic big songs. Like we're getting back to that. Us, rather than the kind of darker elements of the balance, where there
Yeah.
was just, there's just dark times.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree on all that. And like even with a song like The Other Side too, like I can understand like how that concept of, speaking your piece and just explaining like what you're going through is like very like, inspiring and, like very intimate on how we're dealing with things too. And like, I usually like ask like people this like as well too. Do you ever feel like music is like kind of like a form of like therapy for you to speak your mind on like a lot of things that you would have never done like on any other like outlet and all that?
1,000,000%. If I did not have music as my outlet, I do not know what kind of madman I would be in this life. I definitely, it is my voice. It is my, it's pretty much everything to me. I love music more than I love most things in this world. So I would definitely say that it is therapeutic, and I think it is for the listeners too. I think that's why bands and fans in these days, especially where like these algorithms kind of put you in front of people that kind of need you, like you put yourself out there enough, someone who needs that pickup or someone who needs to hear those words or hear those songs, like it'll find them. And so I 100% believe in that. And, we've always kind of tried to do as much as we can with that too. We've done shows that donate the proceeds to mental health and stuff like that. That's a big thing for us. Gotta take care of your soul, gotta take care of your mind, gotta take care of your heart. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
music is the last form of magic that we have in this reality. It really is. It's something that you can't necessarily touch, but you can feel it. You know what I mean? And I think that is incredibly therapeutic.
Yeah, no, 100% too. And to even get back on the whole like aspect of like fan love and like fan culture and all that, like especially after that we discussed more about touring and all that, as like an independent band, do you feel that with the amount of fan love like the band receives and the culture within creating an atmosphere for fans and artists to be comfortable in discussing and interacting with stuff is like something that your band has like value more. Like I remembered, I think like in an interview you talked about how you were using like Indiegogo to kind of get the proceeds for the project, but then you're also doing other ways to connect with fans, like like even meeting them for like intimate performances and stuff like that and all that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the fans have saved us more than you would think. There was a time a few tours ago, we were in Portland, Oregon, really beautiful state, really beautiful area, but we literally got robbed. I mean, like these people took like a drill to our lock on our door, got the button open, snatched up my backpack, our merch guy's backpack, and my drummer's backpack. Like we got robbed, man. I mean, like I had a MacBook Pro that was in there that had all my music on it, all my lyrics, all my stuff on it. It was gone. And we were devastated because it was like, oh my God, like and unfortunately, the way that things are or were over there at the time, like the police couldn't really do anything, and we were just sitting there kind of like, oh my God, like what do we do? And when we started putting it out there in order to, a lot of the fans like showed up and like donated to help us like get back on the road. There was a time when our van got like towed or something. We like parked in a parking lot and walked into a Guitar Center, but I guess you weren't supposed to park in that parking lot. It got towed, and I mean they like took a big old chunk out of us. And one of the fans heard about it and like just like covered it. It was like amazing that they're there to like support. And we did a lot more Indiegogo stuff before, because we like crowdfunded some of the early recording. We crowdfunded, I think, a video once, and it's always been amazing. And I'm so grateful to the fans that support, because that it really does like help. And kind of on my last thing, the way that the world works now is like if you find your people, like together you can rise. You know what I mean? Like, if I can inspire them with a song, or I can help lift their spirits when they're feeling down, they I guess, they also have the ability to, help us financially to keep going, because they don't want to see us fizzle out. Because, in this day and age, you run out of funds, you run out of projects, there's not much else you can do after that. So I think it's always been amazing, the fan outreach and the fan love. And I even say that like the band is Awake at Last, but I also say that like our fan base, everyone who's involved in this program, we're all Awake at Last. That's like at least that's what I'm trying to create now. Like I want, Awake at Last is the name of the band, but I want Awake at Last as a franchise, as an entity, to be like a fusion of us and our fan base, and we're all kind of in it together. You know what I mean? And I think that, moving forward, trying to use social media, I want to try to bridge that gap even more than we have, because social media just be running away with stuff sometimes, man. These little trends and all these little
Yeah.
quick fixes, bro. It's crazy.
Yeah. And like that idea of community, like it kind of holds like together and all that because I know like even with some bands, like community is like even like valued more than like anything else and all that. Like I mean with like ICP, with like the Juggalo movement and all that, with the Grateful Dead movement that happened like a long time ago and all that, and like even like these like new fan bases like coming up like the whole like Playboy Cardi like fan base, like the Opium fans and all that, like it kind of fosters onto like protecting one's own and making sure that everyone feels like equal, like no matter what and all that. So I definitely agree.
Absolutely. Honestly, we got a buddy, Mankini. He does some interviews and stuff like that. Really interesting character. He's got a lot of charisma. He's a great guy. And he's pretty active in like the Juggalo movement and like the gathering of the Juggalos and stuff like that. And when I was a kid, I mean, there was a lot of like friends of mine that were like really into that when we were younger. And I never really like dug in. It wasn't really like my thing per se. But I have so much respect for the movement because again, like that band ICP and all the different other like artists and all the other peeps on that, like they really like brought together like an actual like community where these people who, for the most part may feel like misfits in their area and they or in their wherever they're at, and it gives them a place to belong. And man, I got nothing but respect for those guys. I'm always like, if we ever got offered to play at the gathering of the Juggalos, I would 1000% go, and I would 1000% like be like, let's go, like let's
Yeah.
go hang out at the carnival. You know what I mean? Like let's go rock and roll it. Like, so
Yeah. No,
I do
I
love it. I
definitely
love it when
yeah.
fans and bands come together, man. That's the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, no, I definitely manifest like that moment as well too, and to even speak more on like social media and all that. Like I know with TikTok right now, Universal Music Group decided to remove their artists like music off of like TikTok due to like artists like not being like compensated for the songs like being played and all that too, and like in a person like as a person of your position and all that that uses like social media, do you feel that it's another step in like the right direction for artists to be supported more, not just with like mainstream artists, but like with independent like artists as well? Or do you feel that it's kind of like the opposite right now?
Hmm. That's That is a question that resonates pretty loudly with me. Actually, fun fact, I didn't even know about the Universal Group removing their artists until you mentioned it to me, like shortly before this interview. And when I read that, I was like, wow, like I didn't even know that that was kind of a thing, but it doesn't surprise me necessarily. See, TikTok is a double-edged sword, and I mean, like I said before, like we're a little bit older. Me and the band, we're trying to figure it out. Like we're trying to get like something out there that might at least like tap in because I do think that there is value and something that's cool about an outlet that you can use like TikTok where you can just freely reach out to people. We mentioned earlier how like, Facebook makes it a little bit harder. Now you got to put money into ads if you want all your fans to see it. You need to pay for this. You need to put adware or Google ads out and all that good stuff out there just to like, if these people already follow you, why can't they see what I post? Like, why can't they see what we're up to? Like, if they chose to follow me, but it's like, oh, well, if you want all your people to see it, pay money. Now, TikTok did something kind of the opposite of that, which was that they kind of just open it up like if your algorithm hits, then everyone who's on TikTok is going to see that algorithm and they'll see your content and you can get out there. I do think that because the reason I say it's a double-edged blade is it ends up creating those little burst of light trends, right? Because now even some of my friends who are artists who are deeply involved in that, who did have some luck and won on that, they now have to change their entire way of connecting to their audience to be driven by trend chasing and sort of trying to stay relevant after you get that first initial boost. Because the way TikTok works is once you get that big boost, you have to start producing the kind of content that keeps you in that boosted area. So it kind of creates a sort of like endless cycle. Now, the fact that Universal's removed some people, I kind of see why they would do that because they want their artists to be more compensated, and especially with a group like Universal that's like, big money here, and like, they start when they start realizing that the like virality of TikTok is not putting any money in their pockets, Like it doesn't surprise me that they kind of like are changing that up. What worries me about it though, or at least I mean maybe it's not a full worry, but by doing that, it's going to push the TikTok community and the TikTok company to have to start charging, which is going to turn, which could potentially, I don't want to say going because I ain't trying to make any predictions here, but that could potentially turn it into just another paid advertisement thing. It's like, well, now you won't be able to just connect to people based off of the algorithm because now they want to keep these artists, but in order to do that, they're going to have to start compensating, which means the community is going to have to start paying for the services that TikTok offers. You know what I mean? So I definitely think that it's going to change some stuff. I can't say for sure if it's going to be for the better or for the worse, but I do think that the like laws and the paywalls that are put in place with current musical outlets like Spotify, Apple Music, things of that nature. I do think that because record sales are so a thing of the past now, that for streaming, now that streaming is the primary medium of how people are indulging in music, I do think that they could bring those percentages up to make it easier for artists to like be able to succeed and to sustain themselves without having to get millions and millions of views just to make not even enough for a yearly wage. You know what I mean? So I guess it that's a loaded question, right? And you don't want to like it's a tough one to think about, but I'm not surprised Universal pulled their artists off of TikTok. I hope it doesn't change anything for the worse, but I definitely do think that moving forward with this newer, more digital based thing, there's room for artists to be compensated in more ways than they are right now. And I think that would help a lot with the process, because these days, I mean, even if you get like a million views on something, I think that's only worth like $2,800 maybe, like the amount of work and promotion that goes into just getting something to 1 million. You only make like what you could make at Walmart distribution center for like 3 weeks of work or 4 weeks of work. It's like damn, it's
Yeah.
like so I definitely think that it could improve, but I don't have a lot of knowledge on like what kind of moves are being made in the industry on that front right now.
Yeah. And I know even with music too, like to even speak on the whole like idea of like trendsetters, like even like the music's changing to catering to like TikTok's like algorithm right now. Like songs used to be like 4 or 5 6 minutes, and there used to be like a lot of like in depth and all that too, and like now it's like 1 minute 2 minute tracks, and they just go for that viral like hook and all that, and like just kind of goes from there and all that. And to even speak more, do you feel that it's like diminishing the artistry of like some of these artists like and their like sound and all that with these like songs like since like TikTok became like a thing and all that?
I don't know because I can't really speak for like artists and what they're putting out, like as an artist myself, I know I'm always evolving, I'm always doing different things. Um I definitely do see what you're talking about though. Like there are a lot of songs that do kind of seem like they're just kind of like reaching for that quick bite, and then they'll keep sustaining that by continuing to put out quick bites, which isn't, I guess, a bad thing. I guess it becomes like a quality or quantity over quality situation, I guess. I haven't heard a lot I mean, I've discovered some pretty cool artists off of TikTok, like there's some good pop artists that I think have some really good songs that I like would never have found if I wasn't just scrolling one day. Um, I don't necessarily want to say that it diminishes it, but I definitely think it changes the game in a way where, I think those are questions that get asked where, if a band is in the studio or if the band is talking to their producer, their songwriters, or their teams, like it might be one of those things like, oh, this song sounds really cool and I like what you did here, but like we need one that's going to hit TikTok. And I think that always puts a little bit more pressure on an artist because it's like, well, damn, I put my heart and soul into this song, but like you don't think that's going to trend. So now like we're going to start focusing on this other track instead, even though this is the message I want to get out there. But also, I think that at least now that the TikTok initial surge or is sort of over, I think that we're moving into an era where people are being rewarded for creativity. So I think in that aspect, it could it could help because there's a lot of people that would chase those same tones or chase those same song styles, but now there's like some artists that'll come out with some like totally off the wall stuff, and it's got a chance to be heard by peeps who might like really get into that. I think as long as artists stay genuine in their content, as long like everyone put out a trendy video every once in a while, or follow, do whatever you need to do for that, but also focus on some songs that like really talk about like the depth of what you're trying to do. I think genuinity will come through better than like just chasing trends, right? If you chase trends, you kind of get stuck in that white noise of all the other trend chasers. But if you throw a couple of little gems in there that are like genuine, videos where you're like heart and soul talking about what you're actually trying to do, that'll also get some of those fans that might hear what you're saying and be like, oh, you know what? I like this guy, or I like what they're saying, and they can roll with it. So I don't want to
Yeah,
say that it diminishes anything, but I definitely think it's creating a new like meta for what artists are going to be doing, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Honestly, now that they've got like a TikTok Billboard chart, I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's going to keep on kind of moving in this direction. So I think it's a matter of just like a lot of artists are going to have to evolve. Even us as a Wake It Last, like we're going to have to evolve to kind of like ride the train and get to where we can, because we kind of missed the initial TikTok bit, because when it first came out, I was kind of like, I don't know, really want to do all that. But now I'm starting to realize like that's a good way to genuinely connect with fans. So, now we're looking into finding people who can help make content on the road, because I'm not a video editor. I don't know how to do
yeah,
that stuff, but I'm sure I could, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to evolve with it, but I don't want to say it
yeah,
diminishes, but it's definitely changing stuff, man. It's definitely like changing the game. I
yeah,
100% think it's
yeah,
gonna start. We're not done with it. It's gonna keep on
yeah.
showing up for a while.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree as well too. And we just have like these like last few questions for a bit too. And for people that want to like get into your like music and all that too, like like outside of like that fan base, like let's say someone from such and such Utah or such and such, Ontario or Quebec or in like the United Kingdom, like they want to like hear like your music for the very first time, like they're trying to like find something and all that to like listen to like on the road or like working out, like what would be like free songs off your catalog that you would recommend to any person that has like not heard about you or like the band before, or that would like to know more from you or like the band and all that?
3 songs. If I could have people listen to 3 songs from Wake It Last, I think I would want them to listen to Unfinished Business, which is one of my personal favorites. Because I wrote that also during the pandemic, and it was like kind of my I'm gonna get through this song. The other side is probably the song I'm the most proud of. Now it's a ballad, so it might not like scratch the itch for those who like heavier stuff, but it is a song that is like purely me and purely like my heart trying to be put into a song. And then I guess my third choice, this is a tough one because there's a couple that I really like. I think that The Change would be a really good one for people to listen to, because I think that that song kind of encompasses the record. So if they hear that song, they'll like the title of the record song. Maybe they'll listen to the rest of the record, because I'm proud of all the records we've done, but The Change really still to this day resonates with me, and it was I find myself listening to it a lot more recently, because I need to kind of feel the way I felt when we made the change to like kind of get through this next hurdle that I'm going through as an artist, to try and like get back out there and kind of like get the band back out there. So, those would be my 3. So Unfinished Business, The Other Side, and The Change. But, if any of those like start to like make you dig into it a little bit, then please continue listening, because in reality we've got some videos, but the music is the purest form of what we put out that you can get a hold of, and there's lyric videos if that helps, because I know I need subtitles for everything. So because my eyes and ears are not as good as they used to be. So that
Yeah,
I would say those 3 for sure.
nah, nah, I definitely know what you mean. And like as far as like the rest of the year and all that, like what do you guys have like right now in terms of any creative projects, any like thing going on next and so forth. Like I know you have like an upcoming like project that's gonna be like releasing soon and all that. And as well, like, do you have any like other the closing remarks and all that?
We are currently very much involved in the writing process, which is probably why people aren't seeing as much from us social media wise. The thing about social media is that when you don't have new content to put out, I mean, we can keep putting out live photos and little videos here and there, but until we actually have new songs that we're like trying to get out there, I guess I've been kind of just waiting to kind of like unfold it the way that I want to unfold it, in my like theatrical way. And so that is the biggest thing we're focusing on right now is new music because and I'm not sure if it's going to be like a full album yet. Like we might actually kind of release it more like a series, like a series of songs that are kind of like intertwined or that will kind of like get you wondering what the full album might be like, and I'm sure eventually we'll get to a point where we'll have enough to like really package something together and have something nice. But like we were talking about earlier, like these days, full albums, like it's pretty unlikely that someone's gonna sit there and actually listen to a whole hour's worth of music. I mean, I'm sure there are fans that do it, I would never I'm sure there are, but I definitely think that we do live in this kind of world where if we could focus on singles and the storytelling aspect, maybe invest a little bit more in video and in kind of like the theatrics and the pageantry, I think that'll be a better way to like give people more of a full vision of kind of what we're working towards right now. And and we're also looking at doing some shows again soon. I know we're looking at some dates in July. Sorry, in July for sure. And we're not nothing's like set in stone yet, but we definitely plan on being back on the road and we're going to try to cover as much ground as we can because it's been a while and we want to get back out there. We love playing, we love performing, we love connecting with people. So, we're definitely going to keep moving. We're going through like a little bit of a website update right now, so it's going to be a while before it's fully up to date. And we're talking to different web designers to help us kind of like refresh everything or redo everything. We're kind of rebranding a little, not like a full rebrand, but just kind of changing the tone a little bit with this new music. And but awakeatlastrock.com is still the website where like people can get a hold of everything we do. It'll connect you to all of our like different outlets. But Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, all that stuff is out there. And as far as closing remarks are concerned, thank you so much for taking some time and hanging out with me. It's always very therapeutic for me too to just kind of like vent a little bit. And I do apologize for my rambling because I do tend to I dig in a little too much sometimes. And I don't know why I do that. It's just how I be. But thank you for taking some time. And I guess the last thing I would just say is that I want the fans, the listeners, anybody who finds us through you to understand that, like, again, the band is Awake at Last, but what I'm trying to build here is a community that is awake at last. And I want, if you're interested in anything I've said tonight, if you're interested in any of the music I've put out, or if you found strength in anything that once you hear it, if you hear it for the first time, please, take those few seconds to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I know that everyone scrolls, but I don't think that, like, if you're not in the game, I don't think they realize how much subscribing, liking, and like getting those notifications and all that stuff actually sustains and maintains a project, with you as well. So I hope that, if you guys are liking this, like this guy's out here, he's getting deep with some artists, and subscribe to him too. And let's get this community going and keep it thriving, man. Keep moving forward.
Yeah, man. Vincent Torres of Awake at Last, thank you for coming by and all that to like speaking your piece and all that and like everything else too. Like for everyone like listening out there, please like check out the projects, Life, Death, Rebirth and all that, the change, the balance, like even like the singles like Carry On Wayward Son and all that, and like also like Unfinished Business. Like definitely like tap in if you're like looking for a good band. Like if you even like looking for a band like similar to like Ice Nine Kills and all that, or like Escape the Fate or Linkin Park or like Yellow Card, like that type of stuff. Like tap into like Awake at Last, like the music's like very like dope from there and all that. And yeah, man. Thank you for coming by. It was like a pleasure like tapping in, and I hope to do again to do something like this with you soon and all that, so
That'd be great. Yeah, let's chat again once some new music starts coming out. We can start to open up a little bit more and see what else we've been up to.
Yeah, for sure, man. And until next time.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much.